Okay, let's focus. Come back from IPL. Let's play on our own game. So today, what we'll be discussing? What we'll be discussing? Redux. Introduction to Redux. So before going into this thing, like uh, if I ask you some problems that you were facing and the solution that you created, first problem was your prop drilling. Prop drilling. Has anyone faced this problem? Prop drilling, right? I hope everyone has faced it, right? So what was the solution that you created, that you got? Context API? Okay, context API, right? Context API. So now, basically, whatever I'm going to teach you today will look somewhat similar to context API, right? Somewhat the use case is somewhat similar to context API, but that is not same as context API. Okay, that is not same as context API. So before moving into, let's get down to some story. I hope everyone has watched the pre-class. Yes, no? Anyone legend here? Legends in the house can raise their hands. You are saying yes for the legend answer or the pre-class answer. Okay. So first thing about Redux. Why this thing came into action? Like why Redux? So in pre-class as well, you might have heard about this more MVC software pattern, right? MVC software pattern. So what is the seems to you? Like, is it a different language or is it a different tech stack? Is my voice low? Is my voice low? No. No. Okay, please increase the volume. Basically. Okay, so what is it? Is it a software pattern? What is it? A different tech stack or something else? It's architecture, right? Software design. Now, if I talk about architecture, what do you understand by architecture pattern? So now let's understand in a basic kiddish manner, to be honest, a childish manner. Now suppose you might have, suppose if I give you a code, okay, if I give you a code to work on, someone might write all the functionalities in a single file. Yes or no? You can write all the functionalities in single file, right? Another guy can do refactor it, right? Refactor it. You can refactor, like you can write the logic part somewhere, right? You can write the UI part somewhere. You can write the CSS part somewhere. So these are basically a way of writing. Both of them are doing the same thing, right? Yes or no? Both of them are doing the same thing, right? But the functionalities are also same. Application will also work same. But the way of writing things, how things, the flow of their code, that is architecture. That is a architecture. Okay, so talking about MVC, model view controller, it is nothing, it is not new. It is just a way of writing your code. It is just a way of organizing your code. Okay, it is a pattern of writing code. Okay, so the question comes in, what is it? So model view controller, everyone is comfortable with React. Oh, how we write the UI part, how we write the logic part, and how we control the logic, right? Everyone is aware of that thing. Yes, no? Like for basically, if I create a simple counter, so let's create a simple counter to show you the differences. Let's create a component folder. component folder. Let's create a counter dot. Believe me, if your use reducer is sorted, redux will be sorted. Believe me. So suppose if I create a counter here, suppose if I create a counter here, let's create a counter. So what is it basically? For maintaining state, let us write a state count set count. Okay, simple use state. Okay, now let's add this count value here and let's create a button to add. Okay, and on click, I will do something. On click, I will tell you the answer. I will tell you the answer in a more professional manner why we prefer this thing. Just focus here, okay? Believe me, you will not ask this question again. This question I already I get always in every blog, to be honest. And I'll add. So let's create a function and add. Okay, set count previous, return the previous plus one, right? So this is how basic counter is created, right? So let's display it as well. Counter. Okay, if I add it, it is working fine now. Now, if I ask you something, which part it is? Can we say that this is a UI part? Can we say that this is a UI part? Yes. So if you compare with the model view controller, which part, which portion it is? Which section we can say it is view part, right? Can we say this is a basically if I talk about controller, can we say this is a controller? This is controlling something. Can we say this is a model like or where all my data is stored, right? So this basically this is a way of writing things. Okay, this is not a different text type. This is just a way of writing things. So let's discuss this thing MVC. So what was lagging basically from where Facebook was using this MVC flux pattern. Okay, sorry, not flux pattern, MVC pattern. So what was happening in this MVC pattern? So there used to be model, view, and controller. Okay, so let's understand the different portions, like what all comprises the view and what all comprises the model part. So something that user sees, this is a basic definition. So someone asks you like what is view? Something that user sees and interacts within an application, a presentation layer or the UI logic, right? That is your view part. Understood? Any confusion? What is view? That I showed you with the counter example. Any confusion? What is view? That you see basically. If I ask you what is view, the first interaction with any application, the first interaction with any application, you see the UI. You suppose there's a button, there's an input box. That is your view. Okay, right? Like example, chart, diagram, table, functionality, or clicking a button. What is model? What is model? Contains the state, data related logic, right? Runs the application. It can be independent too without views. That is okay. That is something. If I ask you, can we say that this is a model for a small application? This is our model, right? Which is storing our data, right? Okay. So now what happens? What is happening here? Now, if I talk about controller, what is this controller? So now if I ask you this model and this view, this model and this view part are interrelated, connected. How they are connected? How they are interacting with each other? Using this controller? Yes or no? using this controller, they are interacting with each other, right? So I am telling this controller to do something and it is doing something here. But there is a problem here. Can you see that thing? Can you see that? Do not worry, it is not a bad code. Do not consider it a bad code, okay? Just I'm telling you an example. If you look at this MVC pattern, can you see a bi-directional arrow between model and view? Can you see a bi-directional arrow between model and view? Like, so why does it is bi-directional? Why it is bi-directional? Now, for example, if I ask you this controller, whenever I click on this button, it will execute this handle add, and it will change this state. Yes or no? Yes or no? Right? The moment it change the state, it will also change here. Yes, no? So can I say that this view is controlling the model and this model is also controlling the view? Right? Now suppose let's add one more component here, new file. Let's say sample component, sample.jsx. Okay. What I will do here, sample, I will just create a button here. Button here. Okay. And I will write something click. Okay. And on click, I will execute some function that add. Okay. On click, I will execute this function add. Okay. And let's do one thing. Call this sample here in this counter. Sample here in this counter. And you need to pass this add here. Within this add, I will pass this set count. Now let's see. Suppose let's reload it. Suppose if I click on this add, this thing is clear that this add button is controlling this counter. Yes or no? This add button is controlling this counter. This thing is clear. But the moment I click on this click button, objects, what happened? React child, did I do some mistake here? Handle add, pass add as a prop, set value, where sample set count. Okay, sorry, we can pass this handle add. Okay, we can pass this handle add. We passed the wrong thing, I guess. Now it is okay. So now if I ask you, suppose this add button is not visible, suppose this click button is somewhere else. Now this counter is increasing, right? If I ask you, if I don't show you the code, if I don't show you my activity, like whatever is clicking, whoever is clicking, can you guess who changed this counter? Can you guess who changed this counter? Isn't it a problem? Like which button changed the counter? If I ask you, which button has changed this 11 to be 11? From where this change is coming? Isn't it a confusing thing? For anyone, isn't it a confusing thing, basically, right? So basically this bi-directional flow, what happened? This bi-directional flow created a confusion, but for a smaller application, just I showed you that thing, for a smaller application, it doesn't create an issue, right? But the moment there is an action, okay, the moment you scale your application, what happens? There are multiple models, there are multiple views, right? And it will become really hard to track down like who controlled whom. Every model can control a view, and view can also control a model. So isn't it difficult, like something change in the model? If I ask you, who changed that? Who changed that? So isn't it a confusing thing? From where this confusion started? From where this confusion started? From where this confusion started? Like Facebook figured it out, but from where they started facing issue. If you have watched the pre-class, it was mentioned there. Facebook started facing this issue, but in which part of their application they started facing issue? Exactly, Gagan. Chat. Yes, exactly, Arun. In their chat application, when they started scaling things up, like when the Facebook users started expanding, they came up with group chats. They came up with some different forms of chats. Like okay, so became really difficult to track it down if something happens, some change happens in the model or in that is your database. Model is your database. Understand in one word, model is your database. So something is changing in the database. If I ask you, controller can also change model, view can also change model. Who changed what? Isn't it confusing? Really confusing? Yes or no? Like for example, if I give you if I suppose let's play a game here. Suppose who want to Gagan. Suppose there is Gagan. Okay. Suppose there is Gagan. And one more guy is there who will volunteer Akhilesh. Let's say Akhilesh is. Bear with my handwriting. Suppose Akhilesh is there. Both have suppose balls. Both have cricket balls with them. Now if I ask some guy to bring a cricket ball from them. Okay, both have the same color of cricket balls. Both have the same color of cricket balls, right? If I ask them to bring a ball from any one of them, they brought you this ball. He brought you this ball. Now, if I ask you from where this ball came in, what will be your answer? You don't know from where he got. He is not telling you. Isn't it confusing? Yes, no, right? So that confusing started, and that's led Facebook to come up with a different architecture, that is your Flux architecture. Yeah, for a small application that I showed you, yes, correct, Sumit. For a small correct application, it was okay. Facebook was comfortably running, right? For small applications. But when they started scaling up, then it started causing issues. Now they come with Flux architecture. If I ask you the difference between this Flux architecture, what is the one difference that you notice here? Do not worry about what is it and how it is. What is the one difference that you notice here? Can we say that this is a unidirectional flow? Basically, a road construction is going on. They started just today, just uh, in just beside my house. So please bear with it a little bit, okay? From tomorrow, I'll be shifting to a different place, okay? So now, if I ask you a common difference, a basic first difference, can you say that this is a unidirectional? Now here, suppose do not just worry about the diagram. Just worry about the diagram. If I ask you if something has changed in the view, who might have changed it? If something has changed in the view, who might have changed it? The store, that is the 100% sure. That is 100% sure, right? If something is changed in the store, who might have changed it? You can say it a controller. Okay, action and dispatcher collectively become a part of control. Okay, dispatcher. If something, if dispatcher has executed, that means action has triggered. And from where this action has triggered? Any guesses? I will show you in this next diagram. From view. Okay, the flow in the flux architecture is much easier. So from view, the action is triggered. Action triggers the dispatcher function. The dispatcher changes the store, and then store changes the view part. So in this manner, you have a idea, like if there is something happen in your database, something happens in your code, you might be sure that who did this, right? If something wrong is happening in the view, you will first go to the store. If something wrong is happening in the store, you will go to the dispatcher. If something goes wrong in the dispatcher, you go to the action, right? Isn't it a better architecture than that sorry, MVC architecture? How many of you think that? One more question arises if you want to answer it. So should we drop off MVC architecture? No, basically there are a lot of things. There are a lot of use cases where MVC architecture is useful. There are use cases where flux architecture is useful, right? It depends. In tech industry, nothing is what you say, uh, not of use or useful. It totally depends on the use cases. It totally depends on the requirement that you require, right? So even if I try to scale it, even if I try to scale it, if I add multiple stores, if I add multiple UI components, the direction of the flow of the change is unidirectional. So I know if something has happened, who might have done this, right? So if you compare this thing, which one looks much simpler to you? MVC or the Flux architecture? Flux. So the main issue was between the model and view, the you bi-directional thing, right? So now this Flux architecture came into action, but the read like how Redux came into action. Like, to be honest, how Redux came into action. So let's uh, do a revision of MVC, like what were the issues with MVC. Scalability was issue with proper state management. A state management, if you want to do store a state in the data, and if you want to make some changes from the view, there was a bi-directional flow. Okay, so it was really difficult to figure it out, like who changed whom. Okay, so what happened to tackle this thing? Facebook came up with Flux architecture. Facebook came up with Flux architecture, right? Now what happened in this Flux architecture? The direction of changes, the direction of logic was unidirectional. What is meant by predictable state? Predictable. What is meant by predictable? If something has changed in the view, can you predict who has changed it? Yes, because it was predictable. The store must have changed. That's why the view has changed. If something in the store has changed, you can predict who might have changed it, right? Dispatcher, right? So this is what was the benefit of using Flux architecture. This architecture came into action, and then Redux came into action. Redux is built on the top of the Flux architecture. So this architecture, Redux, what Redux does, Redux took this architecture pattern and it took some essence of this context API from React.js, and they created a separate library, open source state management library based on Flux architecture. So if in one line, if I ask you what is Redux, what will be your answer? It is a state management library. Context API, is it a state management thing? Is it a state management? Why it is not? Just read about it. It's a pretty debatable topic. Basically, if you go into some React debate or something, this is the most commonly asked debate topic. Like, what is the difference between Redux and Context API? Why Context API is not a state management? So what they did, they made Redux using this Flux on the top of the Flux architecture, using Context API logic, or you can say essence, and they created a of like basically official state management library which was based on Flux architecture. Now, if I ask you, is Flux architecture just useful for React? No. Sorry, this Redux. So now let's come into it. You can use it for every, like Redux is open to any library, but React, for Redux, React is a VIP guest. Anyone knows this thing? For Redux, React is a, like you can say, chief guest or VIP. He treats as a VIP person, Netaji kind of thing, right? So I will tell you why at the end of the thing. Okay. So what is Redux? This thing is clear. What is Redux? If this thing is clear, a predictable state global state management container state management library for JavaScript application that follows Flux packet pattern. And if you want to read about this thing, just go to the Redux. Can you say this? In one line, they have written a predictable state container for JS apps. Now, the moment you read JS apps, is it React only? JS applications means what? You can use it even with vanilla JS. The only thing you want to have a npm package, that is it. So you need to install this dependency. So you need to have a container. Okay. So basically, this is a JS. You can use it with vanilla JS. You can use it Angular, Ember, Vue.js, and many more. Like whatever library JavaScript. This is basically dedicated to JavaScript. Okay. Whatever, whoever is using JavaScript, you can use Redux as a statement there. Now, similar, the use case, it is used for statement just like use state. But what is the difference between use state? Use state is a what? State management. This is also a state management hook. But what kind of state? It is. Can we say that this is a local state management, right? But Redux is your global state management, similar to use reducer. Now, which problem, the biggest problem of React is prompt drilling. One of the biggest problems you can say that is solved using Redux. So if there is a global state management, if there is a global state, you can directly access the store, the data from there in whatever component you want, whatever whatever way you want, you can access it. And whatever the changes you want to do, you can do the changes directly from the. You don't have to pass it. Yeah, we can solve the drill prop drilling use context API as well. But context API is not a proper state management library. Okay, but for that thing, you will have a concept explainer assignment today. I want you guys to explore it. Basically, in last block, I used to give a blog to read. But today I want you guys to explore it. Why context API is not a statement tool, and what is the difference between Redux and context API? Okay, this is a pretty common question that everyone, almost everyone, gets in the interview, and basically it's the biggest debatable topic in React. Okay, and you can say front end. Okay, so isn't this similar to context API? The question comes in. Yes, no. Isn't it similar to context API? Similar, not same, but similar. Yes, it is similar, right? But it is not. Uh, if you want to read about it, there is a link. This PPT I have attached in the lecture link. You can find there. You can use it as a notes as well. So if you want to read about it, just go and read about it. Okay. They have a pretty good blog written there. It is not. So just to understand analogy, like, so suppose there is a screwdriver, okay, and if you want to suppose there is a screw, and if you want to put in the screw in the wood, you can use a hammer, right? And you can also use a screwdriver. Both are perfect to use, yes or no? Yes, no, both can be used here, right? But you can, even using a hammer, you can put this screw into the wood, right? But which one is perfect to use here? The screwdriver, right? Looking at the situation of this screw, this is not a straight nail, right? It is having threads. So looking at its threads, we found that a screwdriver will be perfect, right? So you can use both, but which one is good, which one is perfect for you, that you have to decide. Okay, so thing comes in, why should we use Redux? Why should we use Redux? So there are basically 4 or 5 benefits of using Redux. Can we, can you start telling me, like, everyone, one by one? Let's do not go to the PPT first. Let's yes, Tilak, predictable, correct. Gagan, state management, correct. Global state management, that will be perfect. Om Prakash, that yes, fast prop drilling. Divakar, correct. Nilesh, correct. Govind, correct. Yes, Raz, one different use case I got. Debugging is easy. Okay. Achilles, managing state is easy. Okay, that is pretty good. Because global state, yes, global state management is there. Work on problem. Clean code, exact, Arun. That is one more use case there. Store all state at one place, that is global state management. Performance, okay. Easy debugging, correct. Scaling complexity, Arun, correct. Is our clean code correct? Readable code, yes. Clean code, correct. Optimization, yes, that might be centralized, yes. Scalable, dry, do not repeat yourself, that increases. Reusability, yes, that is one use case. Not complex, less lines of code, okay. So you guys already guessed almost all of the use cases, believe me. So this is the benefit of uh, putting pressure on your mind on your own, okay. So now let's see the official one. So you guys already guessed it. It is a central state management, that is a global state management. So it is available globally, so everyone can access it and everyone can modify it, right? Yes, no? Second, debugging. Most of you guys guessed it. Like, debugging becomes easy. Why debugging becomes easy? What is the reason behind it? There's a two-word answer, or one word, you can say. Two-word answer if I ask. Unidirection is correct, but one more answer. Can we say that the behind this debugging, easily debugging, can we say that Flux architecture is there? Because of Flux architecture, this easy debugging happens. Yes, no, right? Because of the Flux architecture, because Flux architecture is unidirectional. So if something wrong is happening, I know from where it might be coming. I know from where it might be coming. So easy debugging, right? Performance optimization. Many of you have guessed it. Performance becomes much smooth, because we have a global state and you don't have to go through all the parents and children components to know profiling is there, right? Separation of concern or clean code, you can say. Many of you have guessed this thing as well, right? Any other thing resolves scalability and complexity. Scaling is pretty easy in case of this because of flux architecture. Understood these five use cases, like why should we use, what is the benefit of using redux? Everyone clear? Scaling means what? Like, suppose we have here, how many counters are there we have created? One counter we have created, right? And this counter has been controlled by how many buttons? This counter is being controlled by how many buttons? Two buttons. Now imagine there are 100 buttons and I want to control counter in a different manner from different place. So that is your scalability. If you scale it up, like suppose you are creating a chat application. Initially, what generally do people? Suppose if you are creating a chat, you create for two people, yes or no? Then you start scaling it up, right? 200 people, 2000 people, 2 million people, 10 million people, like, right? So that is your scaling things. Okay. So what happens if whenever you create an application that might work on your local system, might work with your small users, number of users, but it might not work with a large number of users, a large on a large platform. So before going into Redux, there are basically three principles of Redux. And before going into principles of Redux, I want to ask you something. So everyone, please focus here. Let's remove this sample part. I don't want this thing right now. Suppose we have a counter here. Suppose we have a counter here. Let's read this. We have a counter here. So now if I ask you one thing, whenever I'm making a change, React re-renders the component, yes or no? If I console it, if I console this re-rendering, re-rendering the component, let me go to the console. Let me close it up, reload it. It is the re-rendering. Let me remove this strict mode because it will render two times. Okay, it is re-rendering the component, right? Now, if I ask you how React knows that something has changed, how React knows that something has changed. Now, if I ask you, so you might be wondering if it is a state, right? If it is a state, if this state changes, React knows that something has changed and it will re-render, right? You might be looking into it like this. Your answer may come like this. If this count change, the React will know that. How many of you think that if this count change, if I change this count, React, okay, if I change this count, React knows that something has changed and it will cause a re-render. How many of you agree with this statement? If I change this count variable, React knows that. Okay, so now let's do one thing. Instead of doing this set count, and if I do this count plus plus, so this is a constant variable. So let us change it to let. How many of you think that React will know? You, everyone said that you agree with my statement. Now, if I ask, if I click on this add, let's console this count as well to see whether count is really changing or not. Count is really changing or not. Okay, let's. If I click on this add, this count is changing, yes or no? But is it causing any re-render? Is it causing any re-render? Why? Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a pretty simple question. Let me come to the whiteboard. Is my whiteboard visible? Yes. Yes. Okay. Now, what happens basically if I ask you, suppose there is a, you are organizing a party. How many of a party freak here? How many of you love party? Anyone? Don't say that I'm a introvert. I sit at home on my holidays. Pablo party. Okay. Suppose there is a party here. Okay. Suppose there is a party here, and your task is to count the number of people. Count the number of people who entered into this party hall. Suppose there is a gate here. What you will do? You will go and sit there. Yes or no? You will go and sit there, and you can count the how many numbers of people have entered into this party hall. Yes or no? This is the best possible logic that you will implement. If I ask you to count the number of people who are in your party hall, right? Now suppose there's a back door, and some people are entering from the back door as well. Will you be able to count? Yes, no. So that's what React does. Are you able to understand? That's what React does. So if I come back on my code, if I hover over this, if I hover over this set count, let me come down a little bit. If I hover over this set count, are are you able to see something React dot dispatch? Are you able to see something React dot dispatch? What is dispatcher? What does dispatch does? If you remember the user user thing, not update the UI, it update the state. So that's what, consider this dispatcher as a gate for the React that it monitors. So whatever changes you do, if it is going through this dispatcher, then only React will know that something has changed, right? Now, the moment if I'm doing this count plus plus, is it going through this dispatcher? Now you know like why React doesn't know that something has changed. State has changed, but why React is not tracking that? Because we are entering through the back door, right? We are entering through the back door, and we should go through the dispatcher only. If you try to see this dispatcher function in the useref, in the useref, this dispatcher function is not present. There is no dispatcher there. That is why it is not tracked. Okay, so if you want to go from the front door, use this dispatcher. Now you got it, like how React monitors. Now if I do increase, it increases, right? Now let's come back to the Redux part. Let's increase it. So there are basically three principles of Redux. So remember this thing, if you are using Redux, this should be in your mind. Believe me, this is pretty easy. If you are using Redux, this should be in your mind. First principle is single source of truth. What does it mean? Single source of truth. What it might mean? Single source of truth, the store. So if I ask you a question, can we have multiple stores in Redux? No. Why? If I ask you why, it violates the first principle of Redux. That means there should be a single source of truth. So what is the first single source of truth? If I go to the readme, first source of truth, that is a single source of truth. Single source of truth. What does it mean basically? If I ask you, what does it mean? There can be only one store. There can be only one store. Also, it should be global. Yes or no? It should be global. Centralized, both can say, right? This is the first law. Any confusion in the first law? Yeah, a store should be only one store for all component. Any confusion in the first law? What does first law say? Any confusion? Then only I will move to the second law. Any confusion? I got only one answer. Yes, no, something clear? Okay. Now comes to the second. A state is read only. What does it mean? I will tell you why it cannot be. If there are multiple store, will it follow the flux architecture? I told you an example. Just go and bring the ball. There are two guys having the same ball. From where it might come? Can you know? So Redux has set some principles so that no one violates that. The state is read only. What does it mean? The state is read only. Now this might confuse you, right? So if it is a read only, how will I modify it? Now let's imagine, but for something to be a state management, for something to be a state management, there are few basic things that it should allow you to do. First, it should allow you to read. It should allow you to update it, right? You might have learned this thing. For being a state management tool, it should allow you to update it. It should allow you to add something. It should allow you to read it. But it is telling you state is read only. Now, if I suppose this is my store, suppose this is my store or a state, you can say, suppose this is my store. Okay. Now, what I did, suppose inside this store, we have a counter, suppose value is 0. Suppose inside this store, I will store a to do that will have an empty array right now. But if I want to change the counter, it is telling you that you can only read it, but you cannot change it. But if I cannot change it, what is the meaning of this store? If I cannot increase the counter to 1, is it useful? But if I ask you, for whom this law is there, this redux second, this law state is read only, for whom this law is there? Can we say that this law is for us? Yes or no? Can we say that this law is for users? Yes or no? This law is for users. Me as a user cannot change this counter, right? Me as a user cannot change this counter. But can I tell someone to change this counter? Can't I tell someone to change the counter? Right? So who is that thing? Got it? Yes, no. We cannot do directly. Like we cannot, if you want to do this store dot counter plus plus, this thing we can't, right? But I can tell dispatcher to dispatch a type of add and payload as 1, and dispatcher will add it. Dispatcher will do its work. So understood the meaning of state is read only? Understood the meaning of what this law says? You cannot change it, but you can tell the dispatcher to change it. But why this is why it is telling you to do changes through dispatcher only? Can anyone answer? Do not do any changes directly. Do any, if you want to do any changes, do through the dispatcher only. It's like a party room. If you want to enter to that party room, enter through the front gate only. Backdoor entry is not allowed. Here, remember this thing. Remember, do not get confused. Currently, we are not with React. Okay, Redux is totally different library. So if you do any changes directly, your Redux will not compare it and it will not trigger any change. Okay. So to know that something has changed, it should come only through the dispatcher. So if I write the Flux architecture here, action was there, right? Action will trigger dispatcher, and this dispatcher will trigger model, and this model will trigger view, and this view will trigger action. Right? What is telling you? You cannot control the model from view. Whatever changes we'll be doing, only the dispatcher will do it. That is the Flux architecture. That is simple. Understood? Yes, no? Any confusion? In this, state is read only mode. For you, state is read only. You can tell someone else to, now suppose, let's be clever. Suppose your mom told you, you cannot, suppose your mom told you there are summer months, you cannot go, she didn't tell you you cannot go outside the house. She told you you cannot open the main gate. Without opening the main gate, you cannot go outside. So being a wise guy, like being a smart guy, what will you do? She told you not to open the main gate. What will you do? Not boundary guy. Can you tell someone else to open the gate? She told you not you to open the gate, but you can tell someone else to open the gate, right? So that's what we are doing here. But here in this case, dispatcher is the only one who will do change for you. Okay. Yes, you will tell your brother to do this thing. So we will go into technicality part. Just these are the theory parts. So let's focus here right now. So what is the third thing? Third law: changes are made with pure function. How many of you have gone through pure functions already? I think pure functions you have already covered, right? Right. So remember this thing: whenever you are returning a state, whenever you are changing a state, it is recommended. It is recommended always. It is recommended always. Always return a totally new state. What does it mean? A totally new state. Like suppose we have created an object. Suppose this is my store. Suppose this is my store. I can return the same store, right? I can return the same. I can do the store dot counter. I can tell the dispatcher to do this thing counter plus plus and return me the store again. I can do this thing as well, right? But this is not a totally new store. This is the same store. We change the counter in that. But in case of returning a totally new store, that means you will create a totally new object. Okay. And you will put all the values of store there, and whatever you want to change, you will change there, right? This now this object will be totally new object. This object will be totally new object. The reason what happens, now imagine this thing. What is the reason? I will tell you. React compares behind the scene. It compares. Now suppose if I have created the store here, And if I change this store dot counter uh, plus plus, suppose this store is referring, it has a reference of, suppose this has a reference of a. Okay, now if I'm returning this store, it will also have the reference of, it will also have the reference of same, yes or no, a. Now if someone compares this store with this state with this initial state, will it give me any false value? No. So that is why we generally change the object completely, so that we generally change the object completely so that we should know that something has changed. Okay, understood these three laws? Any confusion? Understood these three laws? Should we repeat again? First one, single source of truth. Third one, I will tell you. Third one, once we start into technicality part, you will understand it in much better way. Okay, don't worry. Single source of truth. First one is single source of truth. Okay, what happens? The global state of your application is stored in an object tree with a single store. You cannot have multiple store. But if I ask you, can we have multiple data stored in a single store? I showed you just an example. Yes, we can have. We can have counter. We can have to dos. We can have product list. We can have user list. Multiple data we can have in a single store, but multiple store we cannot have. Yes, object store is an object. So how will you store multiple data? As a key, right? A single, don't worry, I will come to the store. We will create a store. We'll come to the technicality part, don't worry. A single object that contains all application data at one place. That is the logic here, single source of truth. State is read only. The only way to change the state is to emit action and object describing what happened. You cannot do it directly. This thing is not allowed. Okay, just we show an example. Changes are made with pure functions. Okay, to specify how the state tree is transferred by actions, we write pure reducers. Reducers, are you everyone comfortable with reducer? How to write reducers? Yes, no? How to write reducer, how to write action? Everyone comfortable? I told you now, like if you are comfortable with reuse reducer, you will be pretty comfortable with redux, believe me. Pure functions are predictable, okay, without any side effects. Okay, what is meant by side effects? If I ask you, they should not perform any operations that are not related required for getting the final output. That means if I am putting 1 plus 1, it should give me only 2. If I am putting 1 plus 3, it should give me only 4 every time. Okay, reducers are pure functions that take up the previous state and action object and return the new state back. So if I ask you how many parameters, reading this line, can you tell me how many parameters does reducer takes? 2 parameters, right? And how many thing it returns? What it returns? Not only state, new state. It returns you a new state. Redux flow is simple. View, you will trigger an action. Action will go to dispatcher, and dispatcher will go to the store. Simple. Okay, so there are some core parts of Redux. So it's 1 hour. If you want to take, how many if you want break? Anyone? We'll go into the technicality part now. Okay, we'll start using Redux. So I'm giving you 5-minute break. There was theory part, nothing to do here. So you can come back after 5 minutes. Have some water. Because I was the person who was speaking too much, so I should have water, right? But still, you guys can also have water. Have some water. Come back. We'll start the technicality part. Those who are in Ramzan weeks, so sorry for you guys. Okay, guys. So is it everyone back? Yes, no. Should we start now? Okay. So before going into technicality, but moving forward, just do one thing. Install Redux. How will you install Redux? Simple. npmi Redux. Do it, and after that, so that it will be keep on installing, and till that point we can move forward. npmi Redux. Okay, so it got installed for me. So you guys can install it. So there are basically few parts, few components, core parts of Redux. That is your actions, dispatchers, reducers, and store. Okay, we'll be looking at things one by one. Okay, so I hope everyone has run this command, uh, npmi Redux. Yes, no. To check whether it is installed or not, go to package.json and see whether Redux is there or not. Redux is there, right? Everyone done? Should we move one by one? Yes, no, or still installing? So what we generally do, we generally follow a standard, simple architecture. To be honest, you can do it in a single file itself. You can do it in a single file itself. No one is stopping you. But this is what we generally do. Okay, we create a folder called Redux. Okay, within this Redux, we will create four components, four important core parts of Redux. What is actions, dispatcher, reducers, and store. But what I will do, I will create four files. We'll be looking into all the files. First of all, the most important thing, what we need to create, the most important thing, the store. The most important thing is your store. Yes, right? Now, how to create a store? How to create a store? The syntax is pretty simple. Syntax is pretty simple. Const. Let me increase the font size a little bit. Let's come. I think it will not. Const store equal to. Okay. The keyword is called legacy create store. That is coming from your Redux. JS, it will be JS. JSX is for component. This is not a component. Okay. JSX is used for component. This is not a component. Redux create a store, and it will take two parameters similar to your use reducer. How many parameters your use reducer was taking? How many parameters does your use reducer was taking? Two parameters, right? Similar to use reducer, this will also take two parameters. What is the first parameter? Compare the use reducer. I told you, use reducer and the initial state. Reducer and initial state. So let's define an initial state. Const initial state. So we are creating counter. So let's define counter as 0. Sorry, this is an object, right? And from where this reducer will come? So for that thing also, we will create another file. That is your reducer.js. So we have to use this reducer. So we will export it as well. Export const reducer. Now tell me, this reducer is exactly same. This reducer is exactly same to your reducer that you were using in case of use reducer. Now tell me how many parameters it will take. Two parameters. That will be a state and action. state and action. And similarly, we'll write a switch case for now. Just can we destructure this action? What all things come inside this action? What all things come inside this action? Type and payload. Can we send something extra here? Yes, no. Yes, you can send. This is just a this is just a common object. This is just a common object that you can send. You can name it anything, any random thing. No one is stopping you. This is a convention that we generally use. So how we write the default case first? In the default case, just return the state. Okay. Now where we can use this reducer in our store reducer. Call this, import it, and the second parameter is your initial state. Our store is ready. Those who are asking how to create a store, so you need to export it as well. So how will you use it otherwise? So those who are asking how to create a store, is it clear how to create a store? Similar to use reducer, the syntax is only difference. How to create a store, this thing is clear, yes or no? This is your initial state. This takes reducer as the first parameter and this initial state as the second parameter. Whatever initial state you want, you can add to dos as well. No one is stopping you. You can add products as well. No one is stopping you. You can add whatever. Authentication, for authentication also you can add auth. Okay, let me add auth. Let's say false. You can add as many things as you want. Recommendation for what? Yeah, this is your store object. This will be your initial state. Recommendation for legacy create store. Is it not coming? Make sure you have installed redux. Make sure you have installed redux that I told you to do npm I redux. Yes, once you refresh, this will come to initial state. Those are volatile. Okay. Where use both redux and context. If you are using redux, there's no sense of using context. But I'm not sure, but there might be some case where you can use it combined. That is also doable. No one is stopping you. Okay, so let's come back to redux. Let's come back to redux js.org. Let's go to the documentation. Getting started. Okay, installation is done. Okay, and if you go to tutorials, you can see core concepts. You can see, if you want to refer, you can refer whatever example if you go there. So one guy was asking why everyone is taking counter. So can you see this thing here? So let's answer to your question. So redux officially is also taking counter as an example. Why? Is there any love with counter? Are they in love with counter? To dos, you can see to dos as well. Are they in love with to dos? Now I will tell you what happens. I will tell you what happens. Now suppose there is a concept to explain. Suppose there is a concept to explain. Okay, let me remove things up. There's a concept to explain. So if I want you to divide the concept into two parts, okay. If I want to divide your concept into two parts, so first one will be your concept. First one will be your concept. Sorry about this thing, concept. And second one will be your, the example which I am using to explain the concept. Now, if I ask you, where should your focus be? On the example or the concept during learning? If your concept is clear, you can create your own example. You can use it as many times as you want, right? But suppose if I make this example difficult, if I make this example difficult, if I make this example difficult, now tell me where your focus will be, on your concept or on example? Understanding concept or understanding example? Understanding example. That's what we don't want. We can give you a bigger example. There are a lot of examples. If I start giving you a bigger example, your focus will come from here to here. Do you want that? Yes, no. Will that be okay? Your focus will come to the example part rather than going to concept. That's why we try to keep the example as easy as possible, so that your focus should lie more on the concept than on the example. Understood why? Even the official documentation, if you go there, they use counter and to do. So they don't want you to confuse in complex examples. Okay, that's the reason only. Got it? How a store is object. Do not worry. Do not worry about this thing. Do not worry about this thing. How uh, Redux create an object out of it. You don't have to worry about this thing. It is generally, it is just basically use reducer hook. You, if you want to do some local stuff, you can use reducer using a form that is still useful. This is how basically we create a store. Okay. Now, how we generally use the store? How can we use the store? Similar to context API, if you look at this thing, what is this? Provider. So you will have to wrap it up. You will have to wrap this thing up. This index.js, go to your app, and what we have to wrap it? Yes, local legacy create a store is reserved. If you look at the example, if you look at the example, they have used create a store. Yes, no. If you look at the example, they have used create a store. So if you go to the VS Code, if you go to the VS Code, if I show you something, let me comment it out. Export first store. Okay, equal to create a store. So are you able to see this thing? Depreciated matlab, that means it is not generally used. Okay, so you can use, if you want to create a, you can use the, it is also recommending you to use this legacy create a store import instead. Okay, even if you are using it, it will work. No one is stopping you, but the thing is depreciation, they have not changed it in the examples. They should change it. Okay, now we have to provide a provider here. Let us provide a provider here, similar to your context API, right? Provider, why it is showing me error? Let me cut it from here. Why it is not recommending me? Mhm. Let me. Redux is installed there. Sorry, provider comes from. Sorry, you cannot use provider here right now. Do not go into. I was going somewhere else. Okay, sorry. And so I forgot this thing. I went into yesterday. Tomorrow's class. So how if I'm using this store, I'm exporting it. Can I import it somewhere, anywhere? If I'm exporting it, can I import it somewhere? Yes, no. Yes, of course you can import it. Suppose where do you want to use it? Inside the application, that our counter.jsx, right? So instead of using this set count or the use state, what I will be using, we'll be using this store now. So const data equal to store. Coming from a store, this is your data and this is your store. Now let us console this store. Let us console this store to check what is the data. Let me reload it. Let me remove this re-rendering part. Comment it up. We will need it anyway. Set count I will not be available here. Counter will not be available here. On click. Okay, save it. Console log data. What happened? Yeah, now it is coming. So if you open this thing, what is the data structure of this thing? First of all, what is the data structure of this store? If we directly do not directly, you can console the store. Do not store it somewhere. If we reload it, what is the data structure? This is an object, right? And within this object, we have few methods. Any familiar method to you? Any familiar method? That is your dispatch. And if you read this get state, can you tell me what it might be doing? This get state method, what it might be doing? If I ask you, any guess? Getting the state, not updating the state. For updating, remember this thing. For updating, always from where the updation should happen. From which method? Always dispatch. Get state might be giving you the data, right? So let us now use it. Data. So can we destructure here the get state from this object? Get state. Okay. Now instead of consoling this whole store, so let's keep the store as well. Let's console the uh, get state as well. Call this. This is a method, right? This is a method. We need to call it or not? Yes, no. Do we need to call it? Yes. The moment you save it, isn't it our store, the real store, the state that we have saved here, right? Isn't it the same? Now, suppose out of this thing, out of this whole store, I want to use counter only. Out of this whole store, I want to use this counter only. How can I get the counter only? Tell me, what should I write here? Get state dot count. Simple. Now, if I save it, let me reload it. Did you see the counter value? We have the counter value. Now, can I use this get state dot counter here? Get state dot counter here as a variable? Yes or no? No doubt, no confusion. First method we explored, get state. From where it is coming? From where it is coming? From the store. It is providing me this get state method, which is providing me the whole state. It is providing me the whole state, and it is allowing us to access the counter, right? We didn't globalize the store. It is basically, if we are importing it, so it is globalized. It is at the common place. If you want to use it in a different component, I can do it in the same manner, right? Can I do it in the same manner? Like I can directly import it and use it. Do not worry. Similar to context API, we will be looking into it, but for that we need React Redux. Okay, so I will tell you why this React Redux is used. Got it? We didn't export in index.js. Index.js, we are not doing anything in index.js. Do not worry. That provider comes with React Redux. Okay, so currently React Redux we are not going in. So just simple how to use this Redux. Simply we are importing it, exporting it, and we are importing it. Don't worry, I will tell you the flow again. Okay, so what we did generally, what we did basically, we created a store Redux folder. We created a Redux folder, right? Inside the Redux folder, first of all, what we did, we created a store using this legacy create a store. And the first parameter was reducer, and the second parameter was initial state, right? Initial state, whatever state you want to keep, you can keep it. No issues there. For reducer, we created, yes, legacy is making it for older versions, compatible with older versions. So this is your reducer. So we created the reducer in the reducer file. Thing is exactly same that you used to create using use reducer. Now in order to use this store in my counter, what I did, I imported it. Let me remove unnecessary things so that it doesn't confuse you. Let me remove unnecessary stuffs. On click handle add also. Let me remove it. Let me reload it. Okay. Now what I did, I imported it, and the moment console is the only store. What it gave me an object. Inside that object there were few methods there. In that method, dispatch is there. What is the use of this dispatch? Can anyone tell me? Those who wanted reiterate, what is the use of this dispatch? For updating the state, right? And what is the use of this get state? For getting the state. For getting this, whatever the current state is there, it will give you the state, get a state. Now if I don't do this counter, if I don't directly save it in console, let me reload it. So it is giving me the whole state. Out of that state, I want to use counter only. So that's why I did here. Understood the flow? Yes, no? Till the point, right? So now what happens? Now we are able to use it, right? So what all things we did? We are able to read. Are we done with updation part? Updating? From where this coming product and to do? Can anyone tell me from where this product and to do is coming? From the store. We have created this initial state here. Inside this initial state, products is there, to do's is there, authentication is there, and counter is there. So out of that, only counter I want to use. So I'm using counter only. That is it. Now, if I want to on click, if I want to add handle, okay, suppose there's a handle add functionality Let's add handle add. Let's add handle add. What can be done here in handle add? Now, suppose if I want to update the store, which method I should use? Dispatch. So can I destructure it here? Yes, no? Any confusion? What I did here? From this object, sorry, this one, the whole store, from this object, from the whole store, why not store dot get state? You can do store dot get state, but tell me that is not a proper way of writing. You use this ES6 functionality, restructuring. That will become lengthy. Okay, you can use directly store dot get state, but come out of the comfort zone. So okay, dispatch. Okay, dispatch. What I need to dispatch here? Again, same, exactly same structure. Type. Suppose this is add and payload. Suppose 1. Exactly same structure will be there. Believe me, exactly same. If you are comfortable with the use reducer, you are comfortable with the redux. Now let's console this for now. Let's console this for now. What I will do here. So if I'm dispatching something, where it will go, in which file I should make changes. Reducer, exactly, reducer.js. Reducer.js. So we have to write a case as well. Type will be add. Now what should I return here? Tell me everyone. What should I return here? Totally, remember this thing. Totally new state. To create a totally new state, just spread the old state, and inside this old state, what I want to change? Counter. So what will happen? The state dot counter plus state dot counter plus. What should I add here? What should be added here? Exactly, payload. It should be payload, right? This is done. Now if I go to my counter application again, let's do one thing. Let's console. Before consoling, let's do one thing. If I click on this add button, anything happening? Anything happening? Nothing happening. Okay, now let's console. How can I check whether my store is updating or not? Which method will allow me to check whether my store is updating or not? How can I debug it? Console log what? Which method? Exactly, Govind, Gagan, Animesh, anyone else? Which method I should use? Redabaring correct, Srinivas correct, Aslam correct, Arun correct, Saurabh correct. So simply get state. Console this, get a state. Okay. Now the moment if I add this, click on this add, is it increasing this counter? Other state as other things are exactly same. My counter is increasing. If I click again, my counter is increasing, right? Again, if I click, my counter is increasing. If I click again, my counter is increasing. But nothing is happening on my nothing is happening on my UI. Now remember the thing that I told you. Remember the thing that I told you. If you want to make any changes in the React, if you want to make any changes in the React, it should go. It should always go from where? It should always go through it should always go through dispatcher function, but we are making changes from the dispatcher function only, right? We are following the method, but the problem is that if I hover over this, tell me this dispatch method is coming from where? The highlighted dispatch method, who is providing? React. And this dispatch method, who is providing? Redux. Now, if I tell you to again go to the same example, if I tell you to go again to the same example, if I tell you to count uh, the number of people in a room, in this room, in this room, if I tell you to count the number of people in this room, and what you did, you went there, but you sat on the gate of other house, will you be able to count it? Yes, no. The dispatcher method is also available here, and the dispatcher method is also available here, but this is coming from React and this is coming from Redux, and we are making changes from whose dispatcher? We are making changes from where? The dispatcher which Redux is providing, right? So will my React come to know that something has changed here? No. For that thing, that is what I told you. If you go to the Redux, let me go to Redux. If you see, there is a library called React Redux. Are you able to see here? There is a library called React Redux. I told you in the beginning, Redux treats React as a VIP guest. They have created a dedicated library for React. Do you see any other library for Vue, for what is it? Any Angular, any other? This is what relation does Redux has. Okay, it doesn't mean that you cannot use with another. You can use it, but for React, it has created a dedicated library called React Redux that will be looking into it tomorrow. I think my battery is about to die. Okay, so till that point, I will be looking into it, how to make my UI render. Understood why my UI is not rendering? At least the reason is clear. Yes, no? Why my UI, even after using the dispatch method, my UI is not rendering. The reason is the dispatch is coming from somewhere else. So what I want to do, we are in different house exactly. Now you guys are understanding. Open to the side, Redux is okay. Store, open to the bottom, split down. I think this much is okay, right? I think this much is okay. Create a store, do not reuse create a store, remove this creator. Complete it. I'm giving you 10 minutes to do this much. Add one more case for reduce as well, similar to this thing. So let's add timer. Let's add 10 minutes. That include break as well. So complete it. I installed npm iredux, but still not getting. Please check in your package.json if it is there or not. Redux. If it is there, it should be recommending. If it is not recommending, go to the Redux official documentation, copy paste. There might be some issue with your VS Code. Not after some time. If you save again, it will re-render. not configure store. No, no, toolkit we are not using. Do not copy that thing. We are using Redux. We are not using Redux toolkit. Don't go there. Get state is showing undefined. Make sure you have passed and you are exporting it. Can we use it to make dark mode? Yes, you can use. My count is still not changing. It is 0. Where it is not changing? In the UI or in the store? In the UI. Um, okay. In the UI, was my counter was changing in the UI? Can anyone answer? Whatever application I have created, was it changing in my case? Even in my case, it is not changing, and you are expecting from in your case it should change. How? Now you want Redux to treat you as well like VIP, right? Are you guys sleeping during the lecture? Honestly answer. I will not tell your name. Don't worry. In my case also it was not changing, brother. Don't worry. It will not affect in the UI. The UI will not re-render. I haven't gone till that point till now. Don't worry. If it is not rendering for you, don't worry. You are not the enemy of Redux. How many are done? How many minutes left? Oh, 5 minutes left. Those who are done, they can take break. Oh, what happened? Um, why it was ringing again? Okay, take a break of 5 minutes. We'll start as 125. Those who have any doubt, they can ask in the meantime if you want, if you don't want to take break, or you can add the subtract as well. Thing will be exactly similar, just copy it and paste it here. In case of add, it will be reduced. In case of pay plus, it will be minus. I don't know. Recommendation is not coming. I did exact same code, but counter is not changing in console also. Might be there's something error. So let us get corrected with your IAs. Get it cleared. Might be there might be. I cannot see your code, so I cannot comment like what mistake you are doing. Uh, what mistake we are doing? So don't worry. Might be there some silly simple mistake might be there. I also do. Uh, so it's not only you. So just one thing, is this whatever I have written, is it clear or not? Tell me, Ritesh, whatever I have written there on the screen, is it clear? Right? If it is clear, don't worry. Get it clear from your eyes. Not a big thing. You might be doing some small mistakes. That is it. If you are getting counter value from Redux, why are we using get use state? So can anyone answer this thing? Can we directly get the counter value from Redux? Is my store providing? Now, look at this thing. Let me show you. If I save it, let me go to the console. This is my store. This is my store. If I want to differentiate it, let's add one string as well. Let's add one string here, store. This is my store here. Is my counter available here? Yes, no. Is my counter available? Who was asking? Deepak. Tell me, can I get counter from here? Even if you open get a state, is my counter available here? No. Got it? So if you want to get the state, you will have to use this get a state function. Then only you will get the state. The store doesn't give you directly the get store state. Done, everyone? Should we move on? Yes, no. One more minute left. Please finish it fast. Okay, so let's come back and let's come back and see why my UI is not updating. Okay, let's increase the font size. Come back to the previous mode. Can anyone answer to this question? Why my UI is not updating? Why my UI is not updating? Can anyone answer? Because we are in a different room, basically. Okay. This dispatch method, whatever changes we are dispatching, from where this dispatch method is coming from redux. But if you want to make react re-render, you have to use the dispatch method from react. Okay, so that's why it is not re-rendering. So let's add one more functionality, that is your reduce, that we had just added button. Reduce on click. Let's handle reduce const handle reduce. You need to dispatch simple thing, type reduce and payload. By what amount you want to reduce, that will be your payload. Handle reduce and go to reducer. So I have added this case reduce. Okay, now it should work. If I counter.js, let's console it here as well, so that we should track if it is changing or not. Let's remove it. If I click on this add, it is adding. If I click on this reduce, it is reducing as well. Working fine. Only thing is that our UI is not rendering. That is it. But before moving that, let me tell you one more thing. We have two more components left. We have two more components left. Store. Okay. Actions. Okay. Everyone understand what action is? Everyone understands what action is? Whatever dispatching? Yes or no? There's no need to explain it again, right? Similar. This will look like this, right? Similar dispatcher. Everyone know, right? But the thing is that dispatcher is coming from, this is how we dispatch things. Okay, reducer we just created right now. Okay, new store, it returns you a new store, the store that we just created. So now there are two more files that we create in a redux. Okay, that is your action.js. Any guesses why these files are created? Why these files are created? Now, one pretty simple question that I want to ask you, one pretty simple question I want to ask you. Imagine that a user, there are two scenarios. Imagine there are two scenarios. One, in one case, user is typing this add as a normal string. Okay. Or add, or let's say reduce. That will be a bigger word. And suppose there is second scenario in which he is storing this. Suppose this is the way generally we write action. Reduce equal to. Now tell me in which scenario he is most likely to make mistake. In this scenario, yes or no? Also, you will not get recommendation from there, right? You will not get recommendation here, to be honest, right? You can even miss you, right? Even you can type a small letter. So generally we prefer this thing. And suppose there are multiple methods, sorry, multiple actions. We separate it in a single file like this. Export, const, add, store it in a variable. I will tell you how you can use it as whatever you want, but this is the convention that people generally use. Export const reduce equal to reduce. Now what will happen if you go to counter.jsx, instead of adding this as a string, yes, you can store in an object as well. No one is stopping you. In an object as well, you can store it. Instead of adding this as a string, can we directly write like this? The chances of making mistake is really less, right? Now, if you reload it and if you add, it will work exactly similar. No difference. Okay. Now, can we do one more refactoring that we can keep this whole object somewhere else? Suppose in this case, the object is really small. Suppose in other scenarios, you have a pretty large object that has some logic or something. So can I separate this thing as well? If I want a single word answer, what is this? The highlighted part. Shiva Krishna, correct? Tilak, correct? Divakar Suraj, Srinivas, correct. This is action, yes or no? The complete object, this is action. So let's create an action.js file. And what I will do within this action.js file, I will create a function export const add action is equal to, this is a function, and this will return me type as, so I will use the variable add and payload as 1. Any confusion what I did? Any confusion what I did? For reduce as well, let's create, instead of add it will be reduce. Any confusion what I did here? I created a function that will return me the action object. Now, how this thing is useful? How this thing is useful? And from where this payload, suppose this payload is a variable, suppose this payload is variable, and you want to add some logic here, add some logic here. You can add it, right? So there also you can add logic. There also dispatcher, if you go to counter, here also you can add logic here, but this will be a really become a really complex code, will not be a clean code. So now I don't need this thing, add and reduce. What I will do, I will just call that function add action, call this function, then call this reduce action, call this reduce action. And if I save it and if I reload it, if I click on this add, it is working exactly similar fashion, in the similar fashion. Our counter is ready. Only one thing is left. What is that thing left? The UI. So let us understand one thing. We don't have any solution right now. We will have a solution tomorrow. For today, we can create a hack. Now, if I ask you one thing, Redux and React are totally different libraries, yes or no? React is different, Redux is different. Right? Whatever changes we make, I want this thing to be reflected in this React. So for that purpose, if I go there, so the counter, let me reload it. There's one more method called subscribe. There's a method called subscribe. So to check what this method does, I will show you something. So suppose this is, let's destructure this method as well. Do not make mistake, spelling mistake, subscribe. Yeah, it is okay. Now instead of consoling this here, whenever I click, whenever I click something, instead of consoling here, what I want to do, call this subscribe method. Okay, this subscribe method takes a callback function. Okay, and let's log this. What you will log? Get a state. Now let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Everyone observe and tell me what you got it from this observation. Observe it carefully. If I click on this add button, if I click on this add button again, if I click on this reduce button, if I click on this reduce button again, what you got from this observation? I'm not consoling anything in this handle add or handle reduce. I'm consoling at a single place, that is your subscribe. Can we say that whenever the state changes, not re-rendering, it is not re-rendering, do not get confused. Can we say that whenever the state changes, this subscribe method runs? Yes or no? Can we say that whenever the state changes in the redux, this subscribe method will run? Yes or no? Now imagine that thing. Let's go to the readme again. React Redux. Whenever something changes in the Redux, what is getting triggered? Subscribe, right? Now, whenever we change something in the Redux, subscribe method is getting triggered. And who will trigger React? Who will trigger React? Any other hook, like who is using dispatch method? Like any, suppose I use state. This will trigger React, yes or no? These are not connected, these are separate. Whenever we make any changes in the Redux, it triggers subscribe method. Whenever we make changes in the use state, it will trigger React. It will cause React to re-render. If somehow, if I connect these two things, our problem will be solved. Yes or no? If somehow, if I connect, whenever the subscribe method runs, do some change in the use state, it will automatically cause a re-render here. Yes or no? This is a hack. This is not a solution. I'm again telling you, this is a hack. This is not a solution. Can you do it? Is it possible? Of course, whenever something changes, subscribe method runs, just use a count variable here somewhere. It has nothing to do with this counter or something. You can even write some random number. No one's stopping you. Just simply call this set count, or let's add this force render because we are forcefully rendering. Okay, set force render. Sorry, spelling is correct, incorrect. Force FORC. Okay, set force render. And instead of set force render, what I will do, previous +1, previous +2, whatever you want to do, you can do it. We can just pass the get state after the dispatch. It is working. Pass the get state. Where do we need to pass the get state? After dispatch, in which thing you want to pass the get state? Setter function, that is also doable. That is also doable, but I don't want to make it make a connection, unnecessary connection between this Redux and React right now. Okay, we are just worried about re-rendering. I want this to be re-rendered. Anyway, if I call this thing, it will be re-rendered. Now if I save it, okay, now if I save it, reload it. If I click on this ad, now it is also causing re-render. Again, I'm telling you, this is not a uh, this is not a proper solution. This is a hack. Okay, for now, just remember this thing. Okay, why we created that? Why we did that? The reason is the React. Whenever Redux something changes in the Redux, subscribe method will run. Whenever something changes in the state, the React will cause a re-render. So we can connect these two things and we can achieve our goal. But tomorrow we'll be looking into React Redux. So in that case, it will not be a case. Okay, we will not need any hack. Counter as dependency. Try this out. Try this out. If it works, then it is okay. Anyway, even if you are using use effect, you are creating a hack kind of thing, right? You are using a hook. You can use any state management hook. That is, show the action file, action.js. This is so that was it for today. Okay. Any confusion in any part that you want to ask, you can ask right now. We have time. Any confusion in any part? Okay, so please do it. Okay, I'm expanding it up. Again, I'm telling you, do not use Q&A section. Subscribe method. Subscribe method is nothing. Understand this in single line. Whenever something changes in the Redux, if you are using subscribe method, whatever function you are providing in the subscribe method, that will run. That is it. Okay, this is your, which file all do you need? Action, open to the right. Or what happened? Where it gone? Action not open to the side. Okay, and action types also you might need. Split down. Okay, complete this much, and once you're done, give me a thumbs up. I'm stopping sorry, recording. And if you have any doubt, you can ask, and also please fill the feedback form. Force reducer. Force reducer, where is force reducer? I don't need, I want this dispatcher function to execute. That is it. Suppose if I don't want this variable to be used, we have a method. Just put a underscore here. Put a underscore here, because only the second parameter will come as a setter function. So if you don't want to use the first variable, just put a underscore here.